to understand myself. Part of talking about women entrepreneurs, of course, is about empowerment and making access to economic progress, to economic opportunities, available to all. But even more generally, this whole program of innovative rural enterprise is about making access to being able to earn a living equal in the countryside as it is in the city. But it's not quite as simple as that. And so I want to talk this morning about empowerment in general. Now, it's an interesting question. You know, are you and your communities disempowered, disadvantaged? You know, maybe not as much as a black inner city community in Chicago. But that doesn't mean that necessarily, you know, you have equal access to wealth and pursuing your dreams as, say, people who live in an urban center. And this whole idea of empowerment comes from a very specifically Norwegian context. You know, Norway, second richest country in the world, with one of the best social welfare systems in the world. As my landlord said to me when I first moved there, you don't have to tie your bicycle up. Nobody will steal it. I'm like, you're right. No. Anybody wants a bicycle in Norway, they can buy one. Even if they're poor, even if they're on welfare. However, along with that strong central government provision of the welfare state comes an encouragement for the citizens to be passive, to do what they're told. We made 1,200 jobs, you take one. I often say that the situation in Norway is like grown-up children living with their parents in the same house as their parents when they're 30 years old. You know, which is, it's dry and it's warm and there's good food, but how exciting is it? How stirring is it? How does that affect how you pursue your own dreams? So, just to give you an example, in a lot of Norway, there's rural depopulation because people are moving to Oslo, leaving their family farm behind. We have a huge problem with this in Norway. And you can see it when you drive in the north of Norway. They have what they call green tunnels. Because nobody's farming the land anymore, the trees grow up around the road and you can't see the beautiful scenic views that you used to be able to see 20 years ago. And in some ways I find it quite disturbing because if you're driving around in the north in the summertime, there are all these empty farms which people do not sell because it's the family farm, even though they don't live there. They go there for 2 weeks in the summer for a holiday and do the essential maintenance. So there's all this food that nobody is harvesting. You know, apple trees, grain, that kind of stuff. So even in nearly the richest country in the world, we have this bizarre situation where people who live in small rural villages see the population decline. Immediately their kids move away and never come back, those kind of things. And the Norwegian government response to that is to create a chemical factory somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And then to build these little instant towns for the people who work in the factory. And that's also, by the way, if you're an asylum seeker, you know, the famous Scandinavian, we welcome asylum seekers and refugees, that's where they send you, is to a free apartment in the middle of nowhere to work at a job in a chemical factory in the middle of nowhere. So you'll find these little Norwegian towns with these huge, tall Ethiopians walking around in jalabas, you know, in the midst of all this little Scandinavian village. But there was we did a project a few years ago, and it was called the Tilflyttingsbygd, which means a place to move to, rather than a place to move away. And we worked with a village 300 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle, which is still farmland, bizarrely. But of course they have 24-hour sun in the summer, which is really weird. It's really, really weird to get out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and walk outside. And there's the sun, and there's the cows eating, and the birds flying, and you can almost feel the grass growing. Yeah, like this. And these people did not take help from the government. And they looked at their small village, and they said, what is the problem? Well, the problem to bring new people in isn't jobs. There's always work. I mean, in Norway, the unemployment rate is 2%. But finding a place to live is impossible up there, because there's very strict planning on land, so you can't build new houses, and nobody will sell their old houses, and the Norwegian government system really discourages you from renting your house, because once a tenant comes in, you can't ever get them out. And so the real constraint for many of these villages, like this place called Finnøy, was people would move there, but they can't find anywhere to live. So the village themselves actually created new houses and also made some others available by working together and saying, oh, come on, that's... And in 5 years, they had doubled the population in this village, from 35 to 60 people, which was an enormous thing for rural Norway. And so they asked me to come and talk about rural community development in Scotland, which I'm going to talk about this afternoon. And when I stood up in front of them, they built a beautiful community hall, all themselves, all with dugnad, all with volunteer and free labor and free wood, and it was really beautiful. So I'm in this room with 60 or 70 people, and I said, normally in Norway, I have to explain what community development is. But here I don't, because you guys are doing it. And 60 people jumped up to their feet and went, yeah! I mean, then you don't see Norwegians doing that. But I mean, that is what community development is about. You know, it's about passion. It's about, you know, making your dreams, working together, doing something that collectively you have an investment in, like I was talking about yesterday, and pride. You know. And we had a little great talk, and then afterwards, one of the development officers from the local county sat down to me, next to me, and he said, no, Rhys, it's not like that anymore. You don't understand. You know, you're an outsider. I'm a planning officer for Hamsun Kommune, and I built a chemical factory with 1,300 jobs. In Norway, that's what we talk about, not 30 people, but 1,300 people. Okay. So how is it going? Well, it's good, he said, except for we can't get enough people to work in the factory. Oh, okay. Why not? Well, you know how it is. And she said, we try and get all these Udlanders to come and work. He says, but you know, what do Uitlanders want anyways? I mean, why won't they come? And I sort of said, well, have you ever asked them? Have you ever thought about asking these Uitlanders what they want? And then, you know, making something that works. Oh, no, it's okay. No. We have a study. We're experts. And so, no, we know what is really what's going on. Top down or bottom up. Yeah. Bottom up development is empowering against the bureaucracy, against those people from the center who think they know it all, who think they have, you know, the right vision. Now the irony is that in Norwegian, there isn't a word for empowerment. This is the result of me working with classes saying, okay, what's empowerment in Norwegian? You know, well, is it, you know, selvstendighet? No, it's not. Is it styrking? No, styrking's not really quite right. You know, myndiggjøring? No. So we came up with this word, maktstyrking, which means makt is power, strength. Styrking is building. And so we've actually invented a new word in Norwegian for empowerment. I don't know what the Czech context is. Is there a Czech word? No. I mean, it's got to tell you something when you can't find a word to describe something like this. I mean, it makes you think, doesn't it?
It must be quite new in English, but I imagine it's...
Well, it is. No, actually it's not. The suffragettes movement was an empowerment movement, and they used that word. Yeah. They also, of course, talked about freedom and so many other things. So the irony is that my institution, this is what we call the learning objective for everything we do. We aim to empower our students to build their own vital futures. That's what all of our courses are about. And that's what this course is about for you as well, of course. That's why we have these tools and these examples. Now, when we talk about empowerment, what are we talking about? We're not talking about, you know, Black Panthers and apartheid in the ANC in the Czech Republic or in Norway. But nevertheless, each one of you, in fact, our lives, isn't our life a trajectory of becoming more empowered to do what we want, you know, to follow our vision, to follow our dreams, to make them come around. So what we're interested here is two kinds of empowerment. Individual empowerment, you, me. And collective empowerment, us, together. To do the things that we think need to be done or that we want to do in our community, in the place where we live. And we're not alone in this. Across Europe, there is an overt, open movement to empower both individuals and communities. And indeed, if we talk about, as I said, if we talk about female entrepreneurship in many places, like in Britain, there's a lot of support for women becoming entrepreneurs as an empowerment issue. It's about an equality issue. It's about, you know, removing the restrictions of patriarchy, and there are funds to support that kind of thing. Now, the irony is, of course, that we all love to hate the EU, and our governments all love to blame the EU for all those terrible things that the EU makes us do, like have bananas that are straight, and, you know, all the measures and weird regulations. But in fact, the European Union doesn't make us do anything. The fundamental principle of the European Union is subsidiarity, which means that power lies at the lowest level possible. So all those EU regulations, your government passed them as Czech laws. There aren't European laws. What country in Europe has passed more European Commission regulations than any other? Norway. We're not even a member of the EU. But the Norwegian government just passes everything that Europe says, oh, we need to do this. And then they blame the EU. So there is a fundamental principle in this European project of empowerment at the level of you, at the level of your community. And indeed, what I was talking about yesterday, international development, that is about empowerment as well. You know, the power to take your own environment and to make something from it. You know, without people saying, no, you can't, or that's mine, get your hands off. No? So, empowerment in this sense of it is really important. The trouble is, it's a bit like the environment, and Hidi was talking about Rio and the United Nations Accords on the environment. There's always a lag between when the idea comes out and the actual practice. Like, for example, with sustainability, there was a good 10 years between Rio and anything substantive happening in Europe that was called, you know, environmental sustainability and structures to, structures to make that happen. And that's because governments, bureaucracies, they all have an investment in the power they have now, and they're all worried that if you make a change, they're going to have as much power. So they resist change. And yet here we are. What are we about? We are about change. You know, we are about empowering rural communities to engage in economic activity and social activity. That's innovation. It wasn't there before. And the irony is that if you do it from the bottom, it looks like what you're doing is adding more power to the whole nation, the whole Europe. If you're at the top, it looks like they're going to take my power away. And so there always is a tension, you know, between those two things. There is, you know, this lag, this period of time between when ideas appear and when they get institutionalized, when they get turned into research funds or projects or actual businesses. And it's because this kind of change, it takes time to come up. It takes time to come up. I don't know whether change is coming faster now than it did 30 years ago before IT and new digital media. I don't know if that's substantively really changing the speed of change. I kind of like to think it is, but I'm not entirely convinced that that's the case. I have a feeling that those same media would be just as effective for keeping things the same as changing them, in terms of thought control, in terms of setting, you know, new meanings. And that's what I'm going to talk about. Because for change to really happen, what we actually are doing is changing the meaning of things. In this case, changing the meaning of what it is to be a small rural community. We're saying no. These small rural communities are the heart of innovation. They're not backwards. They're not, you know, poor, disempowered. We're saying no. You know, when I grew up, if you lived in a remote rural area, you were a hillbilly. I bet you're inbred. Did you marry your cousin? Nah. Rural was bad, you know, something to escape when you got out of high school. Now, as I talked about yesterday, as more and more people live in the cities, rural places have things that they really want and they can't get. And so there's this sort of fundamental change in the relationship. We're changing the meaning of what it is to be rural. Now, how this works, and this is important if you're going to mobilize a community to do something. Now here's another one. A lot of the words I use are of course English, but they're not common meanings in English. You know, the social scientists have taken that word, like assets, from the banks, redefined it into meaning something else. So when I say asset-based rural community development, we're not talking about the stock exchange anymore. You know, we use that, and discourse is the same. Discourse in English means to talk, to discuss. But it also is based on this idea that discourse is not about words, but about what words represent, what they mean. And we have discourses. It's like a constellation of meanings that come together. Yeah, sure. The one I always love to refer to is gender. My father used to say, "Stop crying, you're a boy. I'll give you something to bloody cry about." That's a discourse of masculinity. Boys don't cry. Who says boys don't cry? There's lots of cultures in the world where boys cry. But not mine, because that was what was normal for being a man. Now, is that natural? No, it's socially constructed. And in another society, they would construct it differently. The same way you would for women or girls, or for that matter, for the role of horses in people's lives. You know? A discourse is actually the meaning, and it's produced by us, and by advertisements, and by movies, and by literature, and by all of those things, every time we say something. It's always changing. I mean, I'm old enough to understand, to see how certain discourses have changed over the course of my life. And sometimes, you know, sometimes it looks very trivial, but it means something very different. When I was in junior high school, I got suspended from school for a week for wearing blue jeans. Boys do not wear blue jeans in school. Girls did not wear trousers. They had to wear skirts and nylons. And you know, you got punished if you broke those rules. Now, we don't care about that anymore, right? And that's because that discourse of who you are as a student has changed. You know, now students are supposed to be self-motivated learners. When I was in school, students were empty cups that teachers poured knowledge into. So of course you have to conform and be respectful and wear a uniform and be nice. I mean, that's just one little example of how the meaning changes, and that those meanings are what we could call discourse. The sum of all the meanings which define what is normal, what is allowable and what is not allowable, what can happen and what cannot happen. And we all, you know, I've lived in many countries, and of course every time I move to a new country I have to learn a whole new set of normal. Because it's different in every one. You know, how to behave, you know, can I speak up? You know, can I not speak up? How do I talk to a woman? You know, like men and women, every country is a little bit different. You know, in Norway, if I'm really rich, oh man, you don't dare show it. People will shun you if you show your success. We have this thing in Norway called jantelov. Janteloven says, "You are no better than me. Don't go around showing how good you are." And there's like 11 of these things that say, don't draw attention to yourself, don't make fun of us, don't think you're better than us. So to be an entrepreneur in Norway means you wear old shabby clothes and you don't drive a Porsche Panamera, you know, because that's, you know, I mean, the newspapers love to poke people who show off their wealth, because the discourse of being a Norwegian citizen says you can't do that. Or if you do it, people are going to think you're weird, you're not normal, and they're going to try and make you come back to be normal. Discourse is important. Because, of course, it's not just things like, you know, how a woman relates to a man or a man relates to a woman. It's everything, and the way, everything in our lives, and the way it works is we don't see it. We think it's normal. We don't see that it's socially constructed. We don't see that boys don't cry is the result of a discourse of our parents' generation. We see it as, oh, boys don't cry. It's natural. Of course we know that. We all know that. You know, women are emotional, men are not emotional, you know. Women have emotional intelligence, men can use their hands. You know, I mean, all of those kind of discourses about gender. But it goes much wider than that. And I want to give you an example of how you as a rural community can use gender, actually that's, we already heard that maybe, but how you can use discourse to empower yourselves, to change, first of all, how you see yourself, and then how others see you. In 1970, in Vancouver, so I was 17 years old, I joined a group of people called the Make a Wave Foundation. And we were protesting American and French nuclear bomb tests in the Pacific Ocean. Because in Vancouver in 1963, there had been an earthquake in the Gulf of Alaska, which caused a tsunami which hit the west coast of Vancouver Island with waves that were 35 meters high. You know, Vancouver is a seismic, I mean, in 1962, I was standing in a field and I watched a wave come across the ground this high. It was from an earthquake. It knocked us over. So we were quite sensitive about this. And the Americans were planning on testing their nuclear bombs in the middle of the Gulf of Alaska. It's kind of a stupid thing to do, really. You know, 2 years before, 600,000, 1.3 million square kilometers of the floor of the Gulf of Alaska raised up this much. And all the water went out, and that was the tsunami. So now they're going to drop an atomic bomb on there, you know, just to see if it works. Yeah, you think. So there was this Make the Wave group. And so at 17, I went along to the meetings. And everybody thought we were a bunch of fruitcakes, you know, a bunch of crazy hippies, you know. And nobody was listening, nobody was doing anything. And so we decided, we had these meetings, we decided that what we needed to do was to get people to everybody, not the military, not the government, but all the people, to understand what a crazy thing this is. So I was at this meeting, went on for about 9 hours, and we did 2 things. The first thing is we decided that we would rent an old fish packing boat, and 14 of us would get on that boat and we would sail up to where they're going to drop the atomic bomb. And because this is 1970, one of the guys in the group was a news manager for a private radio station. So he said, look, there's these ham radio stations, you know, the long wave, old-fashioned, you know, HBM, Niner, you know, this kind of thing. And he said, we'll release a little press story every day at 4 o'clock to one of these ham radios. And then they'll send it down the coast to my radio station, and we'll syndicate it for the whole North American news services. And you know what? If we keep telling that story, people will follow the story, and by the time we get way up there, there's no way they'll be able to drop that bomb on us. Because everybody in North America will know that there's these young people out there and you know what assholes the American military are, and they can't do it. The other thing we did in that same meeting was change our name to Greenpeace. And everybody's going, Greenpeace? Yeah, I guess that's okay. Yeah. I mean, you know, it was, and we created this model of what now, of course, you would call standard modern environmental practice, of changing the meaning of what these guys were doing. You know, baby seal pups, killing the whales, polluting, you know, the oil spills. Prior to that, that was, I mean, they were terrible, but it was acceptable. That's simply the price of progress. As, you know, my dad would say to me all the time, it's just the price of progress. By using the media and making these representations, Greenpeace created a model for environmental and social protest using the media that, of course, spread across far more than just what Greenpeace was. What we did, yes, what we did is we created a discursive intervention. By using the media and representations, we put out new meanings about those same things. And we did it enough that enough people started to listen and think about it. Now, this was not guaranteed. And in fact, the story is much more interesting. I didn't go because I was only 17 years old, so I wasn't legally an adult. And in order to have insurance, my parents would have had to sign the papers. No bloody way. So I, you know, helped paint the boat in the harbor and waved goodbye as they went off. But in fact, they disappeared after 2 weeks. So all of a sudden, they stopped having these radio bulletins. A week went by, nothing. And I mean, that was reported too, of course. And then all of a sudden, 10 days later, a radio bulletin comes. And I remember coming home and my mom saying, oh, you know, they heard from those kids, you know, they're safe, it's good. I thought, right, we won. You know, if my mom knows the story and cares, there's no way they're going to be able to drop that bomb on those people. No? But in fact, the reason they disappeared was there was an internal fight on the boat between the vegetarians and the meat eaters over who had control of the cooker. And it was one of those just terrible hippie commune, bad social things that happens in you know, radical movements. But of course, that story never got out. No, they were the heroic, you know, eco warriors, putting their lives on the line to save the world. But we made that discursive intervention. Yes? And I think the takeaway message from that is, we can do it, you can do it. Discourse is not made only by people outside. We make it too. We reproduce it in our lives when we say what's normal and what's not normal, what's okay and what's not okay. And so, and I've seen this particularly in rural Scotland. You know, as communities empower themselves, they change the meaning of what it means to be a rural community. Discourse is not something that somebody else does. It's something that we do, and it changes a little tiny bit every time we do something. Now, sometimes big changes happen, like Greenpeace. Or like 9/11, you know, 9/11 changed all of our lives in at least a little way, and for many people in a very big way. It brought in a new set of meanings to North America, anyway, you know, which was untouchable by them Arabs, and shook, you know. I mean, we go through airport security now, don't we? I tell you what, in Iceland, you fly into Reykjavik, but if you're going to fly internally in Iceland, you fly into Keflavik, the international airport. If you're flying internally, you have to take a bus to the Reykjavik City airport, and they don't have airport security. The first time it happened, they called a flight, and I'm going, where's the security? Where's the security, you know? Who's going to x-ray my bag? Do you want to sniff my feet, you know? They're going, come on, get on the plane. And everybody's walking up to the plane with huge, big armloads of stuff they've bought in Reykjavik that they're taking home. I'm like, oh God, I haven't seen this since the end of the 1990s. How much has it changed? You know? No, I'm not suggesting that any of you try to do something like blow up the World Trade Towers. But my point is that it is always changing anyway. So you could be an agent of change. You can be part of that change. If you know what's happening and if you think about how it can be done. And for me, this is, I mean, again, the women's movement, you know. I grew up in a land where women stayed home and raised babies and had his supper ready on the table when he came home from work and his slippers down there, you know, and he'd eat his dinner and go smoke a cigarette and watch the TV while she did the dishes. That was normal. That's not really normal anymore, is it? How did that change? Well, the women's movement made a whole lot of interventions in the discourses of what's appropriate behavior for gender. And now I have female students who say, oh, I'm not a feminist. I just want to do what I want. I mean, excuse me, that is the definition of a feminist. Is a woman who gets to do what she wants instead of not do what she wants because she's a woman. And all those women did all those things, the bra burning, the occupations, the refusal to, you know, the growth of the sort of radical lesbian movement. Now, we didn't all become radical lesbians. But the point is all of those interventions shifted the meaning of gender from what it was to what it is now. It's like, again, Greenpeace. On the west coast of Vancouver Island, we have asphalt forest companies who clear-cut the land, kill the salmon streams, and then go to Brazil and leave everybody on unemployment insurance in the most productive temperate rainforest in the world. And, you know, the idea that you could tell these big companies, no, you can't cut down every tree, was simply impossible in the 1970s. And it took until the 1990s for people to really appreciate. We managed to save the last unlogged watershed on Vancouver Island, which is 2/3 the size of England, Scotland, and Wales. The rest of it has been clear-cut. Watershed? Yeah. You know, like all the drainage of a river, yeah? Because it's very mountainous, so you have one watershed and it comes down like that. And you should see it is, it's like stepping into a church. You know, the trees are 5 meters in diameter, you know, and there's no branches for 40 meters up. So it's like being in a cathedral. I mean, and the whole of Vancouver Island used to be like that. Now it's all 40-year-old replanted commercial forestry, you know, and no biodiversity and all that kind of stuff. The point is, yeah, I know why I was going to say this. Part of the environmental movement on Vancouver Island, you know, there was mainstream, but there was also the really radical part. And on Vancouver Island was invented an activity called monkey wrenching, which is direct action. Yes? So, monkey wrenching to save the trees, I go around and I take 6-inch spikes and I hammer them into random tree trunks. And if a logger with a chainsaw comes along and hits that spike, he gets hurt. So they close down that part of the forest. Now, I do not support spiking trees because I have a lot of friends who are loggers. You know? And I don't want to see, I mean, it's hard enough to be a logger, you know. On Vancouver Island, we call this the logger salute because nobody has all 10 fingers by the time they're ready to retire. Right? I mean, it's the most dangerous job in Canada. You know, most of the broken hips, broken backs, broken legs, casualties of the logging industry are pretty severe. So it's tough enough. You know, you don't have to go, you know, you shouldn't have to deal with, there's a hidden spike in a tree. I don't support that. However, a secret part of me is glad that there's some idiots who'll go out and do that so radically so that I can come in and say, hey, come on, let's be reasonable. Like, just don't cut these trees down. That's discourse. You see, somebody does something that's kind of outrageous, and it shifts, it doesn't go all the way to where they are, but it shifts the meaning from where it was here over this way a bit. And so now this idea of biodiversity and preserving the land is now mainstream in British Columbia without having to go and spike trees. But any of these kind of social changes, like the women's movement, the empowerment of women, you know, you had really radical, you know, you had what's lesbian separatism, you know, that women should not live in the same land as men in the 1970s. Because as soon as you do, you get, you know, you become part of the oppressive system. Now, obviously it wasn't that popular, because we're not all doing it. However, our understanding of the empowerment of women and the relationship between women and men has moved. Yeah? This discourse thing is really important because discourse is used to determine what can happen and what can't happen. And so many things like, here's where the internet, I think, does have a positive impact. Because people can be exposed to new meanings that they weren't able to be so easily exposed to before. And so, to come back to what I said about, I think, on the first day, you know, you can make reality with words in a bizarre way. Now, there are some limits to that. But, you know, in 2009, I thought, I really am interested in this horses in the rural, you know, in the rural environment. And nobody's doing any research. And then I found 20 people who were doing it from all over the world. So I created a website called the Equine Research Network. And it now has 150 members, and I get emails saying, oh, Dr. Evans, will you please review this paper on horses in Poland? From somebody who doesn't know me. But I'm a world expert in horses. Why? Because I created a website. It didn't cost me anything. You know, I learned how to use Joomla. And we don't have a bank account. We're not legally incorporated, and we don't have a constitution in the Equine Research Network. All we have is a website. But we just made a little tiny change in reality. And if you search equine research in Google, I come up on the first page. So that means that if somebody wants to know about horses in Europe and they search, you know, Föld på Europa or Hästar i Europa, the Equine Research Network comes in. So then they say, oh, would you be willing to contribute to our consultation on is the horse an agricultural animal or not? Well, all of a sudden, I'm contributing to policy. So this is what I mean about empowerment and voice. You know, somebody's listening to me now. You know, when I want to study human-horse relations. Yeah, right. You know, horses are pets for rich people, right? Change that just a little bit. So you can make discursive interventions. Now, maybe the discursive interventions you want to make is about what a thriving little community you're a part of and how you have really cool mushrooms or really cool wine or really cool stuff that people really want to know about and come. But that is all about words. It is about representations. It is about discourse. So this is an important part, not the only, but an important part about empowerment. Because if you change the meaning of things, then the rules change. We call it discursive change. I mean, status of children. I had this conversation with somebody the first night I was here about how, you know, the way I raised my kid, they probably take her away from me now because the rules around children have changed so much. You know, there was a family in England 2 years ago, they threatened to take their kid away because they were 8 and 10 and they let them ride their bicycles to school alone. That's far too dangerous for children. My kid rode her bicycle to school 4 or 5 miles, you know, from the age of 8. She is still alive and it doesn't seem to have hurt her. But the discourse of children, you know, you think back to 60 years ago, farm children, they start working on the farm by the time they're 10 years old. We don't do that now. That's child abuse. You're in effect, denying them an education. The discourse of children has changed over the course of my lifestyle. How? Well, all of those representations which influence the people who make the laws and the social work people who make the regulations, and all of a sudden people are saying, oh, I can't let my kid ride their bicycle alone to school. The social work might come in. Other changes also make this discursive change happen, like the digital revolution, media and communications. I mean, we all have so much more access to information and knowledge now than I did when I was 14 years old. There's no doubt about it. And even things like money. I love to tell the story about when I got thrown in jail in Mississippi driving trucks through the South in 1973. You know, and you guys are old enough, so it's not such a shocking thing. But I have to say, you know, there was no mobile phones, and truck drivers didn't have credit cards. And they're like, you don't have a tax-exempt permit, so that's a $250 fine. You know, my trip cash from Denver to Florida was $50. Well, I didn't have any credit cards. So they said, okay, you're going to be a guest of Mississippi's finest. In other words, you're coming to jail. Until your boss wires $250 down, which was the next day. And, you know, the guy says, right, well, your boss has come on with the money, so, you know, get your ass out of here, you know. And he actually said, y'all come back now. And I thought, not bloody likely, pal. You know. But the world has changed, you know, the possibilities have changed. Just even these kind of technological things. Change is made by individuals who create something new, whether it's negative change, positive change, big, small. I mean, even 9/11, that was individual people who decided to do that. You can also make change. You can empower yourself. Dealing with discourse to make change. Now, it's not easy, it's not quick, but if it's something you have a passion about, what are you going to do anyway? You know? If you have a passion about it, well, you're going to always push to make your vision. And so, you know, empowerment isn't about laws that say you can't do this to her and you can't do that to him. Empowerment is about individual people. That's where it starts. The politicians, remember I said there's a lag. The politicians follow the people. The laws follow society. They come before it, they come after. Where the people go, the leaders follow. And this means that you can change society. A little bit. But that's all we're asking for, is a little bit. You know, to have a little bit of prosperity in our rural communities, a bit of a future for our children in our rural places. We're not asking to change free trade or something like that. And, you know, the tools to do that, if you want to learn it, are there for you. And in fact, it's not a big deal. You do it anyway. We're doing it all the time, like I said. Discourse changes a little every time somebody says it, puts it on their website, puts it on Facebook, does it with Twitter, you know? I mean, you think about those, you know, those classic sort of Twitter and Instagram images that cause politicians to lose their jobs. All that is an act of representation. Nobody pulled a gun out, or a knife, or an axe. All they did was publish a picture. That's power. Chairman Mao said, there is power in the barrel of a gun. Chairman Rhys says, there is power in the barrel of a video camera. Yeah? Because we now can make representations. We can post a video on YouTube. Yeah? And if people see it, it might change what they think. It might change their belief. It might change what they do. So, you know, as a community, you can harness this. You know, and whenever you attempt to do a project, you really need to think about, how do we represent ourselves? Or do we even bother representing ourselves, which is often the case we don't. But by bothering to do this, it can make a big difference to you know, the overall success and long-term of it. Liz, you said this. It's 11:30. I thought it said there that lunch was 12:30.
Till 12:30. It's from 11:30 to.
Okay, that's fine. All right, that's okay. We can do this. Another example, and an important one for rural communities, is what I call consumer democracy. Now, this is something that grew from the 1960s and over the 70s and the 80s. First, where I came from, and the idea is that, you know, there were these boycotts of grapes from South Africa. No, and grapes from Mexico with, you know, Cesar Chavez and the Mexican farmers. There were boycotts of, you know, Nestle and baby milk, or not baby milk as the case may be. And people realized, you know what, we can make a difference if we do this thing. If all of us refuse to spend our money on Nestle baby formula, we can not only change how much Nestle baby formula gets consumed, but we can actually change what people think is normal. That's weird, to give your kids fake food when they're babies. I mean, you know, you have milk, you know. And it started in North America, it spread across Europe, and I say it's, you know, almost everywhere now. And the thing is that it goes even further. We now use that same model very often, especially in North America, with our politicians. It's like, I voted for you. Are you not going to do something? You know, I want my money back. Consumer democracy, you know, and it really changes. I mean, in the 1970s, elected politicians, you left them alone. You didn't bother them. They were elected. They represented the people, even when they didn't. Now, we don't have anywhere near as much hesitation in calling them to task. You said that you were going to give Scotland full fiscal autonomy. That's why I voted for you. And now you're going, we don't know about full fiscal. All right, we're going to have another independence referendum. I mean, that's happening in Scotland right now. So this idea of consumer democracy is really interesting because it's very low in Norway. 2011, on November 16th, 2011, I go to the grocery store to buy some butter. And there isn't any. Smooth, yeah? Now, there's a sign that says, oh, beklager. We're terribly sorry, we don't have any butter. As soon as we get some, we'll put it on. That night, the Minister of Environment, which includes agriculture, comes on the TV and says, I'm really sorry, nation. We made a mistake. Because Norway has a command economy. When I go into my grocery store, the only butter I can buy is Norwegian butter. I can't buy Anchor butter from New Zealand or, you know, Arla butter from Ireland or any of that, only because we have huge barriers about importing this. And he said, you know, the minister said, I'm going to increase the cream quotas, I'm going to reduce the barriers, you know, to import foreign butter. And I thought, that's interesting. We'll see how long these supply chains are. November 16th, the first butter appeared on the shelves on Christmas Eve. So Norwegians spent a Christmas without butter. All of our Swedish friends were mailing butter to Norwegians as a joke. They love it, you know. I got 3 kilos of butter mailed to me. It's, I don't know what that meant for the Norwegian Post Service, because there must have been a lot of it. And I'm saying to people around me, if this was Scotland, people would be rioting in the streets. Fire the bastard. How can you do this? Do you know? In Norway, my friends are going, I eat too much butter anyway. I'm sure it'll get fixed. So we have this consumer democracy is uneven. And it's a weird kind of empowerment. And I'm not saying it's the best empowerment in the world at all. But I'm saying it exists now in a way that it didn't exist in the 1960s and 70s, where you took what was given to you, right? You know? Now we have so much bloody choice, you know, that's what they would say, you know, now. Oh, yeah. But there's this weird consumer empowerment, yeah? And now, of course, we have to worry about the opposite. We need less waste, less choice, you know, less packaging and all of those kind of things. I mean, we come through to the other side. Community empowerment, however, is increasingly important, not just for Norway, but all across Europe. And that means that we have to act together, you know, to get what we want. We have to be heard. We have to speak up. Now, it might just be a silly little thing like, I want a center for young people so that all of our teenagers have a place to go because their life is, you know, because it's such a shitty place to be a teenager here in the middle of nowhere with no transportation and blah, blah, blah. But if we don't speak up and do something and act, it ain't going to happen. No. Change happens because we speak up. Change happens because we act. Not them, but us, you know. And so, empowerment, yeah. You know, empowerment isn't, you know, it's not quite so simple and straightforward as Nelson Mandela or the Black Panthers. I mean, that's also, of course, important. But we also can empower ourselves. We can empower ourselves to make our dreams happen, to follow our passions. And in the case of this course, to start innovative rural community enterprises. Yeah? And sometimes that's hard to see. Sometimes, you know, what do they say, when you're up to your ass in alligators, it's hard to see the forest, or whatever they say. Sometimes it's a bit hard to see. But you've got to remind yourself, yeah? We can make a difference if we do it together, if enough of us speak up. Even in the Czech Republic. Even though I don't know how, because I don't live here and I haven't been here enough, I'm absolutely positive, even in the Czech Republic. Because I've seen the power of this at work, the power of our collective voice to change the meaning of things, which allows people to do things they were not allowed to do before. And at that remember I said right at the beginning, the purpose of my whole university college is to empower our students to build their own bright futures. And this is part of that process. Okay.
Pojďte na oběd, nebo dostaneme vynadáno.
Obědne já. Polívka nevím. Polívka určitě stejně právě, protože jste poslední.
To je taková zmarněná příležitost tady, hospoda, bych řekl.
No, bohužel pak já jsem říkal, že to musí ve skutečnosti, že asi jim promluví do duše, no.
Místo...
Já jsem to zaregistroval. Někde myslím ta adresa, kde to je. No heslo právě, že ono to udělá, takže se tam přidá, jako zapomněl jsem heslo a ono to pošle nějaké heslo. Akorát tam není, ten příkaz, který to pouští automaticky, tak tam není, a tím se to neposlal ještě. Teď se zase to zjistuje. Je tam, může se tam dávat soubory, může se tam to znamená jako na půrodě, tam už tam říkat ne a studio prezentace, dá se tam diskutovat a tam jsou kontakty. Tam je kontakty na jednotlivé, pár nahráváme.